Hey, Slater Crusaders. I want you to imagine that you are a wife or the mom and dad, and your husband or son was sent to Afghanistan last week to cover up for Biden's failures. And you got word that a bomb went off. And then a couple hours later, you hear that 4 Marines were killed. Then 10. Then 12. Then 13. And you're waiting for that knock on the door. You are praying that no one knocks on the door. All day long, all night long, you are sitting, waiting, praying. No one knocks on the door. I imagine the wife with young kids trying to distract herself, trying to distract the kids as the minutes pass, praying that no one knocks on the door. And for 13 wives, for 13 moms and dads, they got a knock on the door. And as soon as they heard it, I'm sure they fell on the ground. 13 Americans killed at the Kabul airport. The numbers potentially could rise. 60 Afghans killed as well, 150 wounded. The deadliest day for U.S. troops since August 5th, 2011. Over a decade ago, there was a helicopter crash that killed 23 Navy SEALs. That itself may have been an inside attack by the Taliban as well, by the way. You can look up Extortion 17. But either way, deadliest day in over a decade. The State Department canceled all briefings for the day. Biden didn't speak till past 5 o'clock. He was weak and frail, shuffled to the teleprompter like an old man. As Jesse Kelly said, people thought they were voting for someone who was dependable, and all they got was depends. He gets up there and coughs his way through. Anyone can read a prompter. Anyone can do that. Look what happens to the one moment when he went off prompter. This was the end of his speech.
Thank you. May God bless you all, and may God protect the troops and all those standing watch for America. We have so much to do. It's within our capacity to do it. We just have to remain steadfast. Steadfast. We will complete our mission, and we will continue after our troops have withdrawn to find means by which we can find any American who wishes to get out of Afghanistan. We will find them and we will get them out. Ladies and gentlemen, they gave me a list here. The first person I was instructed to call on was Kelly O'Donnell of NBC.
Who gave you a list? Who instructed you? I'll let other people cover that one. What in the world was that? Even before that last part about calling on the press. What was that? Steadfast. Everyone sees this. Left, right, Biden supporter, everyone in America sees this. You don't think the Taliban does? We made a couple predictions before the speech what would be in it. They weren't difficult. Right? The first thing was, we're going to go after the people who did this. Not now, of course. We're not going to do it now. But one day in the very hypothetical future, we're going to make them pay. Second prediction, this proves why we need to withdraw. this attack proves. I'm not going to send any more Americans into harm's way. Yeah, Joe, no one was asking you to send more Americans into harm's way, but look what you did. Look what happened. Third prediction, which ended up what happening, is, this wasn't the Taliban's fault. ISIS is the real enemy. The Taliban's not that bad, see? They didn't do this. They're our allies now. I'll get to that in a second. Fourth prediction. The evacuation on the whole has been an incredible success. Historic. Oh, not since the Berlin airlift, blah, blah, all that. No. Nice try, Joe. You don't get to sink the ship and then brag about the number of lifeboats. Fifth prediction. Oh, listen, you guys are exaggerating a bit. There's a lot of attacks in Afghanistan all the time. This is just one of many. Now, no Americans have been killed since February 2020. But that's part of the it was bound to be messy. Right? No one said this was going to be easy. No one said no one was going to die here. It was bound to be very messy. It's tough business. And then finally, the sixth thing we predicted in this speech and that Biden is trying to use to brush it all away is talking about how brave our soldiers are. Of course they are. But this was entirely preventable. All of it. And if anything, the bravery of our soldiers is highlighted and contrasted against the cowardice of you. All of it preventable. All of it. Even if you make the miscalculation about the Afghan army and you didn't think the Taliban would take over in 3 days, right? Even if you blow that, we gave up Bagram Air Base to the Taliban. There was still an opportunity to take the air base back. It's 30 miles outside of the city, way safer for an evacuation, already a military installation. There's more runways. We could have had more flights in and out. You could have controlled the crowds better. There could have been way more space, right? Between the crowd, there's everyone. The whole thing could have been more spaced out. All right, suicide bomber probably wouldn't even have gotten that close, wouldn't have been much damage. All that stuff would have been true. But we didn't want to take the Bagram Air Base, or Biden didn't want to take it back because the optics would have looked bad. Yeah, the optics. None of this needed to happen. 13 Americans dead, and it's going to get worse. This isn't the end. None of this needed to happen. But Biden wants you to think that it's been a great success, and I'm such a great peacemaker. And he also wants to convince you, this is a sick and twisted, this whole thing. He wants to convince you that the Taliban's our ally. He wants to convince you that the Taliban's our... This was Biden's tough guy moment. This is a tough guy moment in the speech here.
Anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
I don't believe you. But it doesn't matter what I think. You think the Taliban believes him? Do you think the Taliban believes you, Joe? You think the Taliban's like, oh no, we're in trouble now? You think ISIS believes you? Think they're shaking in their boots? As Jim Treacher said, yeah, we will not forgive, we will not forget, says the guy working with the Taliban. After abandoning the entire country to the Taliban and working with them for our security, the same guy's like, we will not forgive, we will not forget. You kidding me? This is Marine Corps General McKenzie. He's the head of CENTCOM. Here's what he said yesterday about the Taliban.
We believe it is their desire to continue those attacks, and we expect those attacks to continue. And we're doing everything we can to be prepared for those attacks. That includes reaching out to the Taliban, who are actually providing the outer security cordon around the airfield, to make sure they know what we expect them to do to protect us. And we will continue to coordinate with them as they go forward.
That is so surreal. Like, I hope you understand the gravity. That is so screwed up, so surreal. 20 years after 9/11, did you ever think we would have the head of CENTCOM, the top Marine general, talking about how we're relying on the Taliban to protect us? That's what he said. He said, that's a quote, we're relying on the Taliban to protect us. If that's not the most screwed up thing you've ever heard, we're relying on listen, stop. We are relying on the Taliban to stop terrorism. That's where we're at right now. That's how well things are going. Not well. All right. We got a video here, or a picture of about where this happened. You can see all the people. By the way, those people on the bottom, like lower, they're standing in sewage. It's about thigh-deep sewage right there. We have video of the scene afterwards, but we can't play it, obviously. It's bodies piled high. It's odd. You know, the expression is that sometimes when you see something traumatic like that, you'll never forget it, right? It's seared in your memory forever, and you'll never forget the image, right? But there's also situations where something is so bad, it can't even register in your brain. So it's the opposite. So no matter how many times you see the aftermath of bloodied and mangled bodies piled high in sewage, no matter how many times you see it, your brain can't accept it as a real thing. You like almost think it's a video game or a movie or something. You can't. And the whole thing's entirely avoidable. It's just wrong decision after wrong decision. It's a total failure from the commander-in-chief. There's no question about it. There's no way to spin it away. This can't be spun away. Trump got impeached over a phone call. Keep that in mind, a phone call. A phone call that, by the way, he released the transcript of right away. And he was impeached over that. This president makes a terrible decision, continues to fail, puts us in unwinnable situations, makes more bad decisions, gets backed into a corner, ignores the failure, ignores the American lives lost, thinks it will all go away. That's the thing. Thinks it will all go away callously. The other day, he came to the podium and talked about the budget bill. Right? That was a couple days ago. He talked about the budget bill. Talked about masking kids in school. Went after Ron DeSantis. Then 13 Americans die, and there's still no accountability, still no change of course. And it's going to get worse. The Fox White House correspondent said hundreds of ISIS members are in the vicinity, attacks likely to continue. Of course there will be, because we're weak. We're weak. We've lost ourselves. We've lost ourselves as a nation. We've lost ourselves as a military. Biden said it's important, in this speech he gave the other day, he said it's important that what America says matters. Well, here's ABC News talking to the generals on the ground the other day.
How confident are you that all American citizens who want to leave, all Afghans who risk their lives to help us in this mission, will get out in the next 7 days?
And so what I can guarantee is we will get as many out as we possibly can with the time we have available.
Which implies some will be left behind.
I
could
won't
be.
speculate on that. All I can say is we will get as many out as we possibly can.
When did we ever start talking like that? When was that ever as many as we possibly can? What is that? Since when did we let other people set the terms of what we're going to do? Not only other people, but the Taliban. We're letting the Taliban set the terms of us rescuing Americans? How about we never leave a man behind? That's not just a trite little expression. That's not a guideline that sometimes we should consider. That's essential. We are clearly not a people of our word. We're literally leaving American citizens behind, who the Taliban are going to kill. And it's going to be spun as, well, they chose to stay. No, knock it off with that. They chose to stay. And I said a second ago, we lost who we are. This is the Sergeant Major of the Army. This tweet was sent, it was either like right before, it was like right in the midst of all this. I want to say it was right after like the imminent warnings, maybe before the explosion, but it was like right in the middle, the beginning of all this stuff, right? He sent this tweet out. Sergeant Major of the Army. Diversity is a number. Do you have people that don't look or think like you in the room? Inclusion is listening and valuing those people. Women's Equality Day reminds us that we're smarter and more lethal when we come together as an inclusive, cohesive team. Our values demand it. That's the Sergeant Major of the Army. What? That tweet right there is not unrelated to what happened yesterday. It's not just that tweet, right? It's the years leading up to that moment right there. It's not unrelated. We are so out of our league. These Taliban guys are humiliating us. humiliating. And you've seen the videos and the pictures now of them wearing all of our gear, right? Hoisting up the Taliban flag, replicating exactly the Iwo Jima American flag, right? They're humiliating. And you also probably saw the video now of them working out in the weight room of the palace, right? The president's palace. And they're such idiots. They don't know how any of this stuff works. They got on the elliptical machine and the guy's using it backwards. And we're losing to these guys. We lost to these guys. We are so out, and it's not because they're great and strong. It's because we're that pathetic. This is the NBC News reporter who's done a good job. I'm not criticizing him. But he's talking to the spokesperson of the Taliban, which is such a weird thing to even say. Here he's talking to the spokesperson of the Taliban.
Afghan women who are terrified.
They are our sisters. We must show them respect. They should not be frightened. The Taliban are humans and from this country. They have fought for their country. Women should be proud of us, not scared.
Look at that guy. Stupid Americans. And you know the spokesperson, you know what he's thinking. He's thinking, you idiots. Have you not seen the torture videos? You know what we do to women. You know what we're doing to women. You know what we're doing to the traitors. You saw what we did to the police chief the other day. We brought him out, gave him a blindfold, shot him in the head right in the street. And you're asking how we're going to treat women? All right, yeah, I'll tell you what you want to hear. I'll feed you what you want to hear. Give me a break. And just a reminder, those are our allies. Oh, good thing they're out there protecting us outside the airport. That's the position that Biden put us in. We rely on those people for protection. That spokesman, by the way, he goes on and says that there's no evidence that bin Laden was behind 9/11. How about that for a horrific bookend to all of this? Not only do you have the bookend on the beginning of it, you have people falling out of the sky, jumping out of the World Trade Center, bookended at the end with people falling out of airplanes or off the side of airplanes. You also have a bookended with Taliban and bin Laden, causing 9/11, ended with us talking to the Taliban spokesman 20 years later in Afghanistan, ruling Afghanistan, saying, oh, there's no evidence that bin Laden had anything to do with 9/11. There's no evidence for that at all. General Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he made a lot of news a couple weeks ago because he was talking about the importance of critical race theory in the academies and woke and all that stuff. And he talked about how important it is to understand white rage. Oh, I'm a white man, and I need to understand white rage as well. It's so important. Well, as Benny Johnson said, I hope General Milley is feeling the white rage of the family who lost their Marine sons and husbands today. We got great guests coming up next. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusader. Super grateful for our next guest, Harold Earls. He's a former Army Ranger and former commander of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. He's running for Congress in Georgia. Harold, how are you, brother?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me. Wish it was under better circumstances.
Yeah, but I'm grateful you're here. Let's talk about no man left behind and how important that means and how that's not just a trite little expression that we have. What does that mean to you?
For me, one, is personal. I mean, part of my job was to bury soldiers in Arlington National Cemetery that came home, that paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I think it's a disgrace to them. It's a disgrace what we're seeing with the leadership of Biden is that he is working with the Taliban. He's asking the Taliban permission on when we have to get out by, and it's going to cost American lives. Undoubtedly, mark my words, it will cost more American lives because of his weak leadership.
What is going on? Like working with the Taliban, like that is the craziest thing. I heard Mackenzie mentioning this yesterday, the head of CENTCOM, and he's talking about how we rely on them to protect us. Like, what in the world? Now, or is that just a horrible strategic decision, or is that my pride speaking? How do you take it?
Yeah, fascinating. One, I think what's interesting, it's not just Biden speaking and working behind the scenes with the Taliban. He is overtly saying in public speeches and interviews, we're working with the Taliban, we're asking the Taliban permission. No, that's not how the conversation should go. The conversation should be, we're the United States of America. Listen here, Taliban, this is how it's going to work. You're going to back off. We're going to get out all of our troops, as well as those that helped us. And oh, by the way, we want our equipment back. And if you're not going to give us our billions of dollars of equipment back, we're going to take it out of your cold, dead hands.
Yeah, what's up with that part too? You're right. Like they have obviously Biden said the Afghan army was the most well-equipped army, one of the most well-equipped armies in the world, and now the Taliban is one of the most well-equipped.
Now the Taliban.
I haven't heard him say anything about getting all that stuff back. Is there any behind the scenes perhaps going on there, or are we just going to let him have everything?
Mind-blowing. So no, there's nothing that I've seen at all. We've actually been working on evacuating Afghanis out, and interpreters and folks with the CIA actually getting them out. Our team, because our officials, Warnock and others, have absolutely failed on getting them out. But I do want to point out with the equipment, there's two things that blow my mind. Just a total failure of leadership from the Pentagon, because they've been too woke to actually lead and create a decisive plan, and the Biden administration. That's one, how do you withdraw your military troops out of Bagram before first withdrawing your own civilians and those that helped you? And then secondly, how do you not either destroy your equipment in place or get your equipment out? Two things that common sense, a sixth grader can realize this and execute a better plan than what's been executed.
Go deeper in that. I'm totally with you. But seriously, how did they do that? Right? Because these generals, they're not total idiots. Maybe they are. But how could they not have done that? What did they think was going to happen? How could they not have done it?
Yeah, great question. I think what it is you have top-down leadership that is saying, no, I'm commanding you to do this. And so they don't get that left and right maneuverability to say, okay, we have this hard deadline. Let's look at this August 31st deadline, right? When they're acting with this deadline, they can only withdraw as much equipment as they can withdraw, right? You never train to time is what they tell us. You never execute to time. You execute to the standard. I learned that. As the commander of the Tomb of the Unknown, we maintain the highest standards and traditions in the nation. And that standard, you never accepted anything less than that standard. And that's what it should be right here. The standard is getting Americans out at all costs, leaving no man left behind, as you said. And to me, that's sending a statement across the world, right? This isn't just a statement to the Taliban and the Afghani people. This is a statement to our own people here in America and across the globe that we will go to every corner of the earth until we search for and find our Americans and those that helped us and bring them home.
What was those terms you just used? What to time or what were those again?
Yeah, you never train to time. You always train to the standard. It's the number one thing. I mean, I learned it from some folks that are now generals in our military, in our woke military. You always train to the standard. The standard is the most important thing. And for me, I think that we've had a commander-in-chief that was executing on a time and not actually what was the standard and what was needed, for this country.
Hence obvious failure. Yeah.
That's right.
Give us into the mind of these guys who service members who served in Afghanistan, who served with these interpreters, who for a long time, this has been a major problem of interpreters not being able to get, or not being approved for their visas. Vice did a documentary, you perhaps saw it back in 2014, with these guys who have tried for many years with all their paperwork in line and all the letters of recommendation from the captains and the Americans that they served with, and they still got denied their visa to come to America. And I just read this great article in New York Magazine from, I think, a former Army Ranger, actually. And he said, this crushes the Americans who served these interpreters, who made promises even perhaps to do everything they can to get these guys home, and now they're going to be killed. So it's just more death, more pain on their souls, even as they're here in America. Is that true? And speak to that.
Yeah, for sure. One, speaking of, a lot of my buddies obviously served with these folks, served alongside them as well. And I can tell you that there's already a mental health struggle in our forces, right? 22 veterans a day commit suicide. I had a buddy last night call me late last night and said, hey, I got 3 buddies who are in a really, really dark place. They're fighting some very big demons, one of which I knew one had lost a leg to Afghanistan, right? And he's like, what was this for, right? And so as you will see, there will be a cost to American lives downrange. I guarantee you, unfortunately, the sad reality, there's going to be a cost to American lives, both stateside, for Biden's failed leadership.
Wow, that is so interesting, and clearly nothing that they thought of. There's no doubt they never thought of that. Let's stay on that. What else are you hearing from other guys that you know, and general morale of the guys who are out? And maybe, do you have any insights to any of the guys who are currently still in?
So what's been most interesting is really the failed leadership here in Georgia, specifically with Warnock and Ossoff, and then Democrat Lucy McBath, who currently holds my seat. We had a lot of people in our district actually reach out, former, veterans, saying, hey, I got contacts of, my interpreter's still there trying to get out. What can we do? What can I do to get them out? We had people reaching out saying, hey, I even want to fly there and try to get them out myself. They were desperate. And the sad reality is you have leaders right here in Georgia, in the seat that I'm running for, that aren't doing anything, right? They didn't even respond. One responded and said, we'll open up a case file, right? We tried to go through the State Department. We eventually had people start reaching out to us. We have 172 people who are actually working to get out right now. They're actually at the gate that was bombed yesterday. And so we now have people coming to us, and we're not even in office yet. But the thing is, we have a commitment to them. And I think the veterans have a commitment to those interpreters and those that help them. And frankly, this should be the stance of every American, all the way up to the president, is that we will do what it takes. So now we've taken matters into our own hands. Our campaign team has shifted our entire effort to getting these folks out. So we're working directly with folks on the ground with military and assets there, and bypassing the entire, Department of State, and actually getting some of these folks out.
What would a strong commander-in-chief say?
One, you wouldn't negotiate with terrorists, right? Secondly, yes, you reassure the people, but you need to have strength, right? I think that is the number one thing right now that we are so desperate for in leadership that is lacking in the Biden administration is strength. He's timid. He looks down at his notes. He's instructed to do X. He's instructed to do Y. No, we need leadership. We need someone to look the Taliban in the eye and say, we are not messing around. We will bring the wrath of God, all $2.2 trillion, with our F-35s flying overhead, our drones striking, and do whatever it takes to bring people home. That's the message that needs to be said, and it's not what was said yesterday.
As an Army Ranger, how dangerous would the mission be? Because we're hearing about some helicopters that did leave the airport. Not far, but there was a hotel just right down the street from the airport. And there were, I think, like 189 Americans or so in there. And the helicopters were able to get in, get people out. And that's where the other bomb was that people aren't really talking about as much. How dangerous are those missions for our Americans to go out and get these people? Which we need not be in this situation, but alas, we now are. How dangerous is that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think common sense tells you, obviously, it's very dangerous, right? The average person understands the danger behind it. But what makes it more dangerous is when, one, you don't have decisive action, but you also don't have overwhelming firepower, right? You don't have the support. We pulled out of Bagram. We pulled our military assets out. And so now we're even more exposed than we should have been, right? So I think, one, as far as how do you salvage this going forward, what can Biden do? I think, yes, it will be a dark stain on history and on our country forever. There's no question about that. But going forward is how do we save American lives? And I think that we have to increase our firepower and make it very, very clear that we're in control of this airbase, and we will leave when we are sure ready to leave, when we get out all the Americans.
Yeah, he's not doing any of that. Not even close. Harold Earls, Army Ranger, former commander of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, running for Congress in Georgia. What's your website, Harold?
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's earls.org. So you can reach out to on our website if you know folks that need help getting out. We are focusing all of our efforts right now on what's most important in getting folks out.
Earls.org. Beautiful. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you. Good being on. Thank you.
Have a good day, man. We got a couple more vets coming up next. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Excited. Our last guest, Harold Earls, former Navy SEAL, or excuse me, former Army Ranger, had a great line about working to time versus working to standard. And right now we're working to time, which means we gotta hurry up, we gotta get it done. We got the deadline, as opposed to you do the mission. As long as it takes, you get it done. Doesn't matter how long, you get it done. And we're not doing that now, which is very clear. And this was asked to Jen Psaki yesterday.
Who killed service members today as well. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. You just noted you were in some of these meetings today. Was there ever a point where the president was reconsidering this deadline of having all U.S. forces out by August 31st?
No, and here's why. The president relies on the advice of his military commanders, and they continue to believe that it is essential to get out by the 31st. That is their advice.
Yeah, because I think I got it backwards before. Sorry. We should be working to standard, get every American out. Instead, we're working to time, August 31st. Joe Collins is here. He's a 13-year Navy vet running for Congress against Maxine Waters in Los Angeles. But again, the Navy vet, obviously the most important thing here. Joe, how are you, brother?
I'm doing good. Slightly disappointed, highly disappointed. I'm going to say slightly about what's going on in Afghanistan and the way the Biden administration is reacting and their lack of response to everything that's been going on.
Could you imagine it being worse? I mean, it just seems like bad decision after bad decision. I know it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but some of these are obvious.
Yeah, I can't imagine it being worse. I can imagine Joe Biden pulling all of our troops from, our entire area of responsibility out there in the Middle East and chaos breaking loose. I mean, we've just had 12 Americans that were killed over in Afghanistan from a bomber, and it's slightly sad to see what's going on. And I think that, I got a 14-year-old daughter. She could have came up with a better strategy. I think that we need to be ramping up forces and taking back the Kabul airport. And, even during this interview, they asked Joe Biden, do you trust the Taliban? And he said, no, I don't trust the Taliban. Then his administration turns around and gives the Taliban the names of Americans and other allies that need to escape Afghanistan, thinking that the Taliban is supposed to protect these people. And I can't wrap my mind around all of this stuff that's going on right now. I really can't.
No, that's one of the most insane things anyone's ever heard. Speak to this, as the head of CENTCOM said, we have a shared common purpose, the Taliban and Americans do. And I think he was specifically talking about leaving the airport. So we want to leave the airport by August 31st. The Taliban wants us to leave by August 31st. Therefore, they're going to cooperate with us and us with them, I suppose. Is there any truth to that? Is that wise?
I think CENTCOM has lost their minds right now. And I think that, they're on this whole woke culture and trusting these Taliban to do whatever it is that they say they're going to do. I mean, we've seen video after video after video of Taliban literally killing people over there. And so these are the people that the Biden administration and CENTCOM and the rest of these woke military members are trusting right now. I think it's a bad idea to trust a terrorist organization who we've been at war with for the last 20 years. It's like saying, oh, you're going to change. You're going to change because you said so, knowing that history has proven that these violent extremists is not going to change.
How could anyone possibly think they're going to change? I'd like, show me one thing that has ever led anyone to believe that they're different now in any way whatsoever. Am I exaggerating, Joe, when I say that the Americans, you have the Afghans who helped us, and the Americans who are left behind are going to be killed? I don't want to be dramatic, but I think we need to confront the reality of what's happening here, right? Like, what hope do the Americans who are left behind have?
They don't have much hope with Joe Biden at the helm. As a president, he's been a very terrible president from the get-go. And, I think I called this back in January when I was on Sky News. They asked me, what did I think about Joe Biden and his international relations? And I said, Joe Biden's he's gonna destroy international relations. I said, I can't see Joe Biden continue the work that President Trump did when it came to international peace. And you can see because of his weak leadership, everything that's going on right now. And I think it's a mess. I mean, the Taliban has $88 billion worth of advanced military equipment, and they're going to be using that on us. I mean, our helicopters, our tanks, our Humvees, our guns, our drones, they have everything. They have literally everything.
I think that's the most insane thing of it all. I can't even, it's so ridiculous. What's morale like with the guys right now?
I can't even tell you. Everybody is so distraught. I've been having people calling me since everything happened, asking me, hey, man, are you okay? Because, I was boots on the ground during Operation Iraqi Freedom with Task Force 124. And, we were saying the same thing, but this was under the Obama administration. And I think a lot of people need to understand it. Pakistan has been funding the Taliban the past 20 years. We've been at war with them. Obama was instructing U.S. forces to train ISIS. Obama was also bombing these people's families. So the Taliban that you see here are the children of the Afghan people who were bombed during the administration, the Taliban children who were being bombed during the administration. And we knew this retaliation was going to happen. And when Joe Biden gets up here and you hear Jen Psaki say that he was trusting his intelligence, Joe Biden literally got on TV and said everything that those intelligence agencies were saying about the Taliban resurgence was a lie. He literally said they were lying and it's not true. It can never happen. The Afghan army has 300,000 people. There's no way in hell they're going to be taken over by 70,000 Taliban forces. And what happened? They absolutely took over. So Biden had an opportunity to plan for this. Biden had the intelligence that he needed to counter. And I don't mean the intelligence in his own head. I mean his intelligence agency that was giving him the information. And he did absolutely nothing. And so I agree with every single person that says, it's time for Joe Biden to either resign or be impeached. And I'm actually personally working on articles of impeachment on behalf of we the people to give to Congress to move this man out of office because he is destroying our country. He's destroying our international relations. And he has gotten more Americans killed in his first 200 days than any other president in the history of the United States.
More to come, unfortunately. What is your website, Joe?
My website is joecollins4congress.com.
Running in Maxine Waters District in LA. Good, Joe. Good to talk to you, man. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
We got one more guest coming up. Man who served over there. He's got some incredible insight on what we should be doing next. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. John, do you want to do the Biden before this? I want to go right to our next guest, Jack Carr, author of The Devil's Hand, Danger Close podcast. He's a former SEAL, task unit commander, and sniper. Jack, how are you, brother?
A lot better than many families out there this morning. That's for sure. After yesterday's devastating attack, hearts go out to those families, and devastating for those families. Obviously, devastating for the country on both the tactical and strategic levels. And we're gonna be looking back on this day. It's gonna be a stain on the country for the rest of time. It's just heartbreaking.
The day and all of this, which I want to get to as well. Let's go back to the beginning. I just got a quick question about the hope that Biden apparently, or at least is saying he had in the Afghan military. Based off your service in Afghanistan and the guys you know, et cetera, did you have any hope that the Afghan military would be able to withhold the Taliban for any period of time longer than 3 days?
Well, to answer that question, you have to go back to you can go back to the pages of history, which we should have done prior to going into Afghanistan. But going back to the December of 2001, if you hadn't gone back and realized that the culture over there is so much different than that over here, what we call corruption, they just call part of society. Like, why wouldn't you go to the warlord that's stronger than the one that's weaker? Why wouldn't you go to the country, the entity, the warlord who's paying you for X, Y, or Z than the one who's not? That's just a part of the culture over there, and it's not abnormal. We found that out in December of 2001 when we were very close to getting bin Laden, and we were relying quite heavily on some Afghan partners at the time. And it really drove home how tribal that country is, how corruption and loyalties are thought of differently than we think of them in this country. And that continues on to today. With the United States leaving, with us pulling that air power, with us pulling our intel support, some of our technical intelligence capability, some of our leadership on the ground that can still help maneuver their elements out there. Of course, when the Taliban comes in, they're going to hand those weapons over and they're going to go to the winning side. That's just a part of culture. Not all of them. I mean, we're seeing the Panjshir Valley we saw up there with the Soviets from 79 to 89. We saw that with the Northern Alliance before in the 90s, and then before we went into Afghanistan in 2001. And there will be a resistance movement up there. That's also a part of the history of Afghanistan. So that's very normal. So it's just heartbreaking on so many levels, because after 20 years, you would have thought that we could have prepared a little better for this possible eventuality, this probable eventuality. And yet it seems like we did everything in the exact opposite order by pulling that air power, pulling our troops, not knowing where our citizens are. And now, yesterday, we have everyone that the Taliban or various terrorist organizations want to hit in one or two locations around this airfield. So in those places, we have American citizens, we have Afghans who helped us over the last 20 years, we have their families, and we have people that just want to escape the Taliban regime. And we put them all around an airfield where they are sitting ducks, where they are targets for the enemy. So it just seems so preventable. You always want to improve your fighting position on the battlefield, and it seems like we did the exact opposite. We gave up our positions of tactical advantage, put our troops in a position that's less advantageous. And once again, just like we have for the last 20 years, we have senior level leaders in Washington, D.C., putting that E1, that E2, that E6, that E7, that O1, O2, those junior military officers and enlisted right into this meat grinder where they have to then scramble, figure it out, make the best decisions possible with what they've been given. And unfortunately, we see what happened yesterday.
So it's so easy for me to play Monday morning quarterback because I don't know anything, right? But I can look back and be like, oh, you should have done this, should have done that. First of all, do you, someone of expertise, do you find these decisions obvious, like, and the mistakes that they've made very, very preventable? Like, what were you guys thinking? And if so, what is it about the general class that makes them so, I don't know, distant from on the ground or distant from the realities and the obvious things about what they're telling our guys to do? Does that make sense?
It sure does. There's so much to unpack with that. Obviously, they're removed from the being that frontline soldier. They've been removed for quite some time. We have not had accountability in the ranks for really since the 60s. Things started to change really then. And Marshall fired general after general prior to World War II, during World War II, to get the right people in the right places to get the outcome that we needed to win a war. President Lincoln did the same thing during the Civil War. He went through general after general until he got to Grant. Then we changed in 1947. We changed the name of the War Department to the Department of Defense. We changed the name of the Secretary of War to the Secretary of Defense. And from that time on, we were really on, when we were talking about mutual assured destruction with the Soviet Union, essentially that's a type of defense offense type scenario. But just precision in language it reflects precision in thought. An old Army Special Forces sniper from Vietnam told me that a long time ago. So when we're calling something the Defense Department and the Secretary of Defense, it's putting you in this mindset, especially when you're doing it for decades upon decades. It's a very different mission than a Department of War, whose job is to prepare for war and win wars, to crush the enemy. So unfortunately, a lot of these things that we're seeing are a byproduct of a general officer class that has been promoted based on a system that was really developed at the turn of the last century, over 100 years ago, when you're just impressing your boss, essentially. There's no 360-degree evaluations. There's not peer reviews. There's not, most importantly, what do your subordinates think of how you're doing on the battlefield or as a leader. It's all top-down, what your boss thinks of you. And that means that a certain person is going to ascend in the ranks. And that's who we're seeing in front of Congress with the stars on their shoulders, very impressive looking shoulder boards and very impressive looking salad on their chest with their medals. But there's a difference between confidence and competence. And these guys are very confident when they go in front of Congress and they request more troops, they request more resources, they give an update on how things are going in Afghanistan or Iraq. But there's a difference between sounding confident and being competent. Those are very distinctly different things. And I think we're selecting for the wrong type of attributes with that legacy type of promotion system.
Brilliant. I got 60 seconds. Do you have any reason to believe that the Taliban is different now than 20 years ago? And how do you predict they will treat the Americans who are left behind or the Afghan allies?
That's one of the most heartbreaking parts of all of this, is for the families who have lost service members to see that the people we've been fighting for the last 20 years are now the ones we're asking for permission to bring our U.S. citizens to an airfield and allow us to take off, allow us to leave. It's to see our leaders then treat them this way instead of just going in, crushing, holding the tactically advantageous positions, getting our citizens out of there, getting our State Department people out of there, and then pulling out the military at the last possible second, leaving nothing in our wake but destruction, and certainly not leaving behind all the weapons and the trucks and the aircraft that we've left behind that are now in the enemy's hands. I mean, it is heartbreaking to see the Taliban and these terrorist organizations stronger in many ways than they were in 2001 when we went in. Certainly better armed, and also with that psychological win of kicking the Americans out of the country.
Jack Carr, officialjackcarr.com for the books, podcast, and everything. Former Navy SEAL. Jack, good to talk to you, brother. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me on. Take care.
Officialjackcarr, 2Rs.com. All right, Slater Crusaders, it's going to get worse. This is just the beginning. Still got a few more days, and many more weeks perhaps even to come. Let's take care for it. Spread the word.